This is going to be an interesting session that we've never done before, and I'll preface it with this kind of lead-in. About 10 years ago, Engineers Without Borders shocked the aid and NGO world when everyone was publishing their annual impact report, usually with inflated impact numbers, trying to get more money, trying to please everybody. Engineers Without Borders published a failure report. And it immediately got widespread attention. It was circulated everywhere. Everyone said, I can't believe they're publishing all their failures. And it gained them huge credibility and respect. They said, this is what we like to see. It's about time someone started doing this. So after 6 years into this, we've never done this before. We decided that it's time to do a public confessional, except we haven't really sinned, have we? This is an opportunity for us to openly share really important lessons learned and failures. And we want to just make sure that they're all going to be little stories, hopefully. And we'll show you a lot about our due diligence and investment process, some of what we learned on fundraising and in spiritual integration. And this is meant to be just very vulnerable and open. It was Thomas Edison who said, I have not failed. I've found 10,000 ways that won't work. I don't think we're at 10,000, but we've had our share. So what I'm going to do is start with our stage gate process for how we do due diligence. So the topic one is going to be really investment pipeline sourcing due diligence. So, and we've learned a lot the hard way. So we've turned down 2 macadamia nut processing companies, and both of them up front looked extremely promising. Both of them faith-led. Both of them had trusted partners that were involved with them. I mean, I'm talking about spiritual leadership type partners. So there was a huge incentive to really, really want to do these investments. So Cynthia, I think I'm going to start with you, with Exotic. You haven't met Cynthia yet, so she is the VP of Investments. Yeah.
I'm getting people asking you to move it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I was following Harry's example. There you go. Yeah.
No, don't. You're all right. It's too far.
Okay. There we go. Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. I'm glad you spoke up. So Cynthia, it's about time we heard from a Kenyan, right? I was just told Cynthia we're overdue, so I'm glad you joined us on stage. Cynthia's only been with us, 2-3 years?
2 years now.
2 years, yeah. And she's already got some failures to share, so no, I'm just kidding.
Too many.
No. One of the lessons learned for us, by the way, is that, and it wasn't really a lesson, we kind of knew it, but I think we were maybe slow to do it, is that we really needed a strong regional office with all Africans. And we're super blessed now to have 5 Kenyans in Kenya for things like due diligence, pipeline sourcing, post-investment, portfolio monitoring. It's invaluable. And Cynthia has been a core part of building that. She's a key leader for us, senior leader for us in Kenya. Do you want to share a little bit of your bio? I think everyone would love to get to know you better.
Yeah. Thanks, John, and nice to meet you all. So I'm Cynthia. I'm Kenyan, based in the Nairobi office. My background is in investment banking. So I've worked in local investment banks and banks across the continent of Africa. So I look after the investment side of things in Kenya, together with my other colleagues. So nice to be here.
Yeah. We're going to start with you.
Okay.
So Exotic is one that we recently, fairly recently, last year I think.
Yeah, into this year actually.
Made a tough decision not to do. What lessons did we learn through Exotic?
Yeah. So Exotic is an amazing business that we really love. We love the business because of impact. 10,000 farmers sell to them their macadamia nuts. They've created 174 jobs. 85% of them are women. Local, female-led, and their CEO is a really top leader in the country, and she's the chair of the Macadamia Association of Kenya, just because of her efforts in trying to create and push for policies, stable policies that help the macadamia processing industry. So we loved the business and wanted to invest in it, but there were a couple of issues they had, a double whammy. They were being hit from 2 sides. On the buyer side, the prices were going down because of international issues. So post-COVID hoarding of macadamia nuts were driving the prices down. Then at the farm gate, the prices were going up. And you want the opposite to happen. You want the farmers to be selling to you at lower prices and your buyers to be buying at the highest price possible. But the opposite was happening to them. At the farm gate, the prices were going up because of government policy that was out of their control. The government kept lifting and putting back down the ban on export of unprocessed macadamia nuts, which drives up the prices of the nuts. And the kind of funding they had was not helping because their lenders required them to sign and seal the sell side contract. So you're tied down on one side in terms of your price that you're selling at, but you don't know how much you're going to buy the macadamia at the farm. So Talenton wanted to come in and just...
Speak up. People are just struggling to hear a little.
Oh, you can't
as loud
hear
as you
me?
can. Just speak up.
The mic is loudest?
It's fine.
If you want, you can go with the handheld. That might be a little better.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Red for whoever's doing that.
There you go.
Yeah, so Talenton came in and wanted to... Better?
All right. Good. Everyone
thank
wants to
you.
hear these failures really bad.
I'm not sure that's a good thing. So Talenton wanted to come in and really help this company because they were being squeezed from two ends. On the farm side, the prices were going up because of government policy. On the sell side, their buyers were buying at lower and lower prices. Yeah, because of post-COVID hoarding effects, the wars in 2024, currency nosedives, and a bunch of things that were out of their control. Because we love the impact so much, we wanted to come in with a structure that really enabled them to get out of this rut. The kind of funding they had, their lenders required them to sign off on contracts and tie themselves down to a particular price without having sight of what the farm gate price was going to be. So this was a double whammy for them and put them in a lot of trouble. Because in 2024, they ended up supplying at a higher cost than they should have, giving them a gross loss. So we wanted to come in and give them a structure that would get them out of this rut and catalyze them to get to where they needed to be in terms of revenue and profits. So we created a structure, shared it with our management team. So we do that first. We shared with Harry and the team first before taking it to the IC. And immediately they were like, this seems a bit too risky. And there's a reason why the existing lenders are asking for signed contracts. So are we just being too risky by trying something different? So Harry offered to get a working capital expert so that we are clear on exactly what are we supposed to be looking out for. Our forte is more on capex lending, more 5-year, 10-year kind of thing. And this is commodity financing. It requires a lot of deep knowledge of the product, the commodity, the factors around it, the quality issues, the seasonality, and things like that. There's so much around working capital for commodity, especially where government policy is erratic, like it was last year in Kenya. So when we spoke to the working capital experts, they said, yeah, even the purchase orders are generous. The lending on purchase order is generous. They would only do it if there's an invoice in play. So the macadamia nuts have been bought, they've been processed, and they're being shipped to the buyer. So they recommended that we look at something like that. And it really made us think and understand that we needed much more information on this commodity and any commodity. Whenever we're dealing with a commodity that is susceptible to government policy and several external risks, we need to work with an expert. Yeah. And so we're doing that. There's a cocoa opportunity we're looking at in Ghana. Cocoa, if you know anything about cocoa, is also very regulated in Ghana. And we really want to get the best advice before we get into that. That was a big lesson.
Yeah, no, it's really, really good. One of the observations in Africa, in general, I'm generalizing, is that every country seems to have one or two commodities that are highly politicized. It's like the government, every time there's an election, they promise free fertilizer or they'll price fix and say, we're going to raise prices for the farmers. And those are, when you see that happening, it really makes it hard to enter in. And what is the government going to do next? You could maybe say that as an analogy to tariffs in America right now. But I do think it's, so we're not pointing a finger at Africa. We have our own issues. Yeah. So Harry, how about over to you, unless you have a follow-up comment on that lesson learned? Because I mean, getting to know faster was a really important lesson, and we have 3 or 4 examples of that.
Yeah.
But area of Finergy was particularly painful for you.
Yeah. I'll just say on that macadamia deal, it was extraordinarily hard for us to say no, because Jane, the CEO, was spectacular.
Yeah.
And she was a remarkable woman, remarkable faith, has just kept this business going, and we desperately wanted to try and find a way to make a transaction work. But there was a learning, and actually it's a good handover to this company called Area Finergy. It was the first time we went through the entire diligence process. We approved a transaction at a management team level. We took it to the investment committee, and they said no. It's the first time that happened, and it was painful. The amount of work, we'd spent 6 or 7 months working on this transaction. The company was set up by a person actually who was known to a number of us. So we had a trusted connection, a very, very, she was a woman out of Europe who had worked in investment banking. She was really, really remarkably sharp. They were building a business that was focused on migrating companies to a significant portion of their power being provided by solar. So in effect, large-scale factories or flower farms or those sort of things, putting solar across the roofs of these massive things. Area Finergy would pay the upfront cost and then sell the power on a power purchase agreement. Looked good. They'd got a good background. But there was a real challenge in that process. First thing is, and you guys might have a guess of this, we were talking about this in April 2020. So just put a bit of context around what might be happening in the world in April 2020. The investment committee immediately, in an early meeting, said, are they going to be able to bring in the supplies? Are they going to, is the pipeline of contracts they're talking about, is that going to be sustainable? Is it? And we sort of fought through that. That was in a pre-meeting, big sort of lesson I'll come back to there. But the second part of that conversation was we also needed then to rely on Area Finergy's ability to do credit assessment on the customer, because the whole deal depended on a power purchase agreement that the customer was going to pay. So actually we weren't just credit checking Area Finergy, we were credit checking their customers and their ability to collect capital over an extended period of time. And we produced a transaction that was, in the view of the investment committee, just not risk adjusted. We came forward with something that the company could afford, and that seemed reasonable, that met our sort of minimum threshold of return, but the investment committee didn't think it met the risk adjusted return that needed to happen if we were going to go ahead with that transaction, and they declined it. I think the first and biggest lesson there for us, and it's something that we really took forward to a deal like this macadamia nut deal, was that the investment committee could say no.
It's not a rubber stamp.
I mean, honestly, that was just crazy. It's thanks, Lauren. It's all right. Hervé's not in the room, so I would have said thanks, Hervé. And team members were upset, actually angry. There were people I was dealing with people in the team who were just really quite furious with the fact that we'd done all of this work and got nowhere. And so that was a huge learning. So we then had to sort of spend a fair bit of time with the team, helping them to understand, why we'd come to that conclusion. And it's really been hugely informative in subsequent transactions, like the transaction Cynthia was just describing, where we sat down as a management team and went, this one's not going to fly if we take that to the investment committee. It's just not, the structure is not right, the risk is too high, and we can't do this transaction no matter how much we love the CEO.
Yeah, Harry, thank you.
So that was bit. The second little piece of that feedback is, we were kind of given a heads up that they were going to say no 3 months before in a pre-meeting, and kind of soldiered on, and that was a mistake, and so we kind of more in the learning space.
Yeah, no, I know that was particularly painful for Harry. We were a small team at the time, and we were very aware that sitting on cash was going to hurt the impact of our fund. So, extra painful lesson of getting to know faster. I do think one of the lessons learned that was applied from that particular investment is now we have a very rigorous approach to our initial screen, and we build a financial model as a first step. So we don't want to take their time or our time unless we know it's a very, very high probability investment. And that initial screen is all of the things that matter to our fund, starting with impact and values, but then business plan, strategy, 3-year audited financials. If they can't give us financials, then that's a red flag, because then what do? You have nothing to go on. A lot of that came up from, and we improved our processes afterwards in a significant way.
And I just should say, it makes me happy to say, actually, RF Energy is still going, 70 companies, they're doing a tremendous job. So at least I feel a sense of, and actually one of the things that we should know about ourselves is if we're the only option for a company, that's actually not always a great thing, because it means that they're sort of super vulnerable. And so good that they're still carrying on.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and share one of my own that I think taught me the importance of knowing your blind sides. And as Westerners doing investing in Africa, you inherently have blind sides. Culturally, there's things that you don't read as well as Cynthia would read. I mean, I like to say it's the best of both. Some people say, oh, everything should be all local, or that sort of thing. I really believe that there's something called best of both. We bring a valid perspective. Cynthia and the Africa team brings a perspective we need, or we might fail. So there was a business in Rwanda, clicked all the right buttons, called Souk Farms. And there was a Nigerian guy that had moved to Rwanda and started this business, and it was doing quite well. It was specialty, kind of unique veggies exported to Europe. So these are high-value veggies like habaneros, those fufu green beans and broccolis and stuff. And I wish to do the technical name for that.
I don't know, they're vegetables. It's not an Australian thing.
Well, they, and they had thousands of farmers supplying them, so the impact story looked good. And here's what was interesting, is he said all the right things about being a strong Christian. We asked all these questions about, his values. It was late in the due diligence process that one of our staff, he's no longer with us, but he's a good close friend of our fund. His name is Flo, and he's a Kenyan. And so after hours, he was meeting with some of the staff, and kind of a happy hour thing. And African to African, without any of us there, they opened up to him, and said, hey, this guy is actually sexually harassing the women in the company. And we were 3 weeks away from bringing this to the investment committee. We may not have found out till later. So we did just, what do you do? How do you handle that with a kind of a biblical worldview, a Christian mindset? Well, I actually went to him knowing we'd likely walk away, but we also wanted to see how he responded, and if there was a deep confessional and showing over time, we'd probably extend the deal, great. But he handled it very poorly. When I did it with a lot of sensitivity, and here's what we're hearing, and he kind of got mad, denied, and acted like a guilty party, quite honestly. And we had to walk away from that one. It just taught us a lot of valuable lessons that when someone says they're a Christian that leads a company, trust but verify. And what is the true fruit? And what are other people saying about their behavior? That's probably the most important question. Yeah. So that was a painful one as well, because we were also very far along in our due diligence. Synergy, if you keep this one quick, because I want to be in later time, but it's such an interesting business model, and there's a great lesson learned in that.
Yeah, there is. So here's this. This is a business called Synergy. They take human waste.
Yes, human waste, you heard that right.
Yeah, I could use a different word. Several, actually. And turn that into high-quality protein that gets used in animal feeds, fertilizers, fish feed, a whole variety of things like that, among other things. So human waste to things we eat, which is tremendous. It's using a thing called a black soldier fly larvae that eats the human waste that becomes, this is a tremendous story. For any of us who have spent any time walking through places like the slums of Kibera in Nairobi, The idea that you could clean these slums up in a commercially viable way from a human waste perspective is just awesome. So it's an awesome story. And the problem was the business leaders of that business were able to tell an awesome story. They were amazing. They were in conferences all over the world. They were on the front podium of stages. These guys were incredible at telling an awesome story. And they raised just a fortune.
Well, Prince Charles was an investor.
In a combination of investment and grants.
Yeah.
And they just kept raising investment and grants and grants and grants and grants. And the challenge was, as we started getting into the due diligence, is the business only survived on the back of their ability to raise grants. We're not recording
Grants.
this panel, right? It's,
Yeah,
I don't want to... Grants, sorry. Grants. Grants. And there's a real challenge in that. When we look at a business now, like we spent a long time evaluating Sanergy because we love the story, like everyone else piled in with capital on that story. When we look at a business now, we look at that grant line item very carefully. Because if the business survives only on that, then it's not viable for us. There are businesses, David Payne's walking out of the room, that do actually a tremendous job of getting some grant capital to do stuff. Don't have a grantified company. Yeah. And so we're kind of happy with that if it's adjunct, but if it's the core way they're surviving, it's a hard pass. Pass.
Yeah. I'll do my best to translate his Australian.
Actually, the Australians would need translating. My mother was British, so that's a little bit British about saying hard pass.
So what I hope you're starting to see is evidence of God's faithfulness, learning tough lessons, allowing us to survive. The early investors probably paid a little bit more of a price for this learning curve because we sat on cash too long. We always try and sit on as little as cash possible so we can move it into high impact investments. So that was, we're doing much better at that, I think. Yeah,
I think so too. Andy gives me a hard time, but mostly I think it's good.
Yeah. We're thankful for our investment committee. One recurring theme in this is that we were blessed and are blessed with a very, very wise and experienced investment committee. Hervé Sarteau was here last year. And he said, he got up and introduced himself as the big meanie guy. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he ran literally a $12 billion fund in 80 countries for mainly the Cargill family, and very successfully, mainly distressed assets. He doesn't miss a thing. And Dave told me, Christian, raise your hand. Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, he's one of the nicer guys on there.
He's replaced Aaron, so he's not near as nice.
You should have a pit in your gut and feel trepidation when you go in front of our investment committee. We all do.
Yeah.
Because you fall in love with the business in many ways, and the story, people you're working with, the CEO. The investment committee doesn't have any of that. They're just objective. So, yeah. I'm going to interject a quote because as we transition to topic 2 here. And I like this quote from J.K. Rowling. Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. And I was thinking about that. For us, rock bottom is Christ. We always have that solid rock on which to stand, even when we're making mistakes. And your prayers and our investment committee and board have been invaluable on that journey. So we'll continue up the due diligence pipeline. We're going to get to some lessons on final close, initial post-investment support, and portfolio monitoring. So I'm walking you through the journey of lessons learned of very start. Now we're getting into deals that have been approved by our investment committee but aren't done yet. And that's a whole zone where you think, hey, investment committee said yes, and there's still a journey ahead. Yeah. So maybe we'll start with you, Harry, on PRI and Burn. You choose where you want to go with it.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say with both of those transactions, we get approved by the investment committee. And one thing, and this is a positive lesson learned, we have developed some quite creative structures that we use to support the businesses that we invest in a way that doesn't penalise them in the early stages, but allows them to sort of flourish, and then we get kind of returns. So, for example, we might have a debt facility with a bolt-on warrant to buy shares in the company. And the combined of those things is how we kind of achieve our total return. And so that's good. Or we might decide, as we did with Burn, to put things in a special purpose vehicle sitting in Mauritius, because that was a really kind of good and clever way of putting things together. So sort of a tick from a lessons learned perspective that some of these creative structures are really, really helpful. Both of those deals took more than a year to close after investment committee. And that is bad. It's bad for the company, who are desperately looking for the capital, and it's bad for us as a team, as we're trying to proceed with the next transactions while we're still trying to make an existing approved transaction work. And some of these get to a time where you go, well, do we have to go back to the investment committee? Because like things in the company have changed, and so it becomes really bad. So those were a really hard process, and we decided we couldn't, we could not have that happen again after going through that process twice. So a few little lessons we've taken away from that. One is, where we can do something that's for us a vanilla deal, we should prioritise that. So now we've developed a debt plus warrant structure. We just take that exact debt plus warrant structure and say to a company, this is what we want to do. And that just speeds things up heaps, because we don't have to develop new legal documents, legal frameworks, all of that sort of stuff. It's already done. So the more vanilla we can do, the better. We will still do specials, I'm sure, in due course, but most of the time we try and go vanilla. The more actively we manage the process, the better. Is Brian in the room? No, he is. Okay, so I'm going to apologise to our legal counsel in the room here. The lawyers aren't the best project managers. Is that true? I mean,
they get paid to go slow.
And when we first started out, we were sort of, we'd go through this process where we'd have a conversation with our transaction lawyer, and they would come back to us with advice, and we would go to the company, and they would go back to their transaction lawyer, and then they would come back to the company, and they'd come back to, and that process just takes ages. So we've increasingly, we do a weekly meeting with all relevant parties, in the room. Both sides transaction lawyers, both sides parties, so that we can really try hard to shortcut any of that conversation. It makes a massive difference. And so we've created a very active structure around how we work with our legal teams. We love Covington and the work they've done for us, so we're very thankful, but it's just learning that process of how we best work with our partners is super important. And it took us a little while to do that. And then the last point I'd say is where we have so we have some international lawyers supporting us, like Covington. We also need local lawyers. And where we have significant number of deals, we've partnered with a single trusted law firm. So we've partnered with a company called Ashativa in Kenya, faith-driven company themselves. And that's been really super helpful when we're doing transactions in Kenya, which represents about 60% of our overall portfolio. So those things have really shortcut the process.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. I really appreciate it. Cynthia, we want to hear from you again. And we could have chosen almost any business in our portfolio with this particular lesson learned, but I think you were planning to speak to, in the context of ARC and POA. Is that right?
Yeah, maybe just POA.
Okay,
POA
just
Internet.
POA? Okay,
yeah.
Great. Yeah.
I think
And
that
they're here too, so.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
They were on the
We
other
love
side
POA.
of this lesson learned.
Yeah, no, we love POA. I think the lesson there was intentionality in understanding how much capital the business needs. Yes, they've asked us for a certain amount now, but then post-investment, there's always a need for more capital. And we've seen this with not just POA, but I think almost all the companies we've invested in. And for POA, it's been especially intensive because of the amount of capital the business requires. It's an internet company, and because of the nature of that business, capital is constantly required. And it takes a while for that capital to get paid back because you're waiting on monthly subscriptions. So the capital required is a lot, and it's taken a lot of time as well because every time a new lender comes on board, we have to assent to the ICA, the intercreditor agreement and things like that. So we're being more intentional going forward in understanding how much capital do you need now, how much do you think you'll need later, and is that going to be enough? At what point will you, say, okay, we've grown enough, and this is where we're pausing the growth. So I think that was a critical lesson.
Yeah, I think thanks, Cynthia, and we love where Poe is headed. One of the key lessons that I think we learned early on the hard way is that when we're first in, which is not infrequent, as kind of the first really kind of more sophisticated, larger investor, we always need to have dry powder or a tranched investment structure. You need to know when they're going to need additional capital, and are they able to raise capital? Is that a core competency? And the ones that have really succeeded, and I've heard it said that investing anywhere is hard. Investing in a context where there's not necessarily replacement parts, there's not an ease of doing business. That's like for instance in the States. There's going to be 3 or 4 times the capital you might expect in 2 or 3 times as long. And if you don't plan for that in advance, they're going to run out of money, or stay not grow or run into major problems. So we actually are really now have developed a network of co-investors, values aligned. We'll come in first, often first in. And then we'll crowd in investors as much as we possibly can when they need it. Well, you're going to hear a lot of stories this afternoon on this very lesson, I think. Yeah. So I'll share one, my own. Biofarms, you've heard about it. We love biofarms. It's in our portfolio. This is an all Kenyan business. They source from thousands of avocado farmers. And high impact. They purposely put their plant close to a slum so they can hire and train their staff out of the slum. And they do this leadership training, all biblically based. They take 3 weeks a year. The CEO and his wife, the COO, the chief technology officer. And so it's a great business. What we all missed, including them, is that we helped them shift from just exporting avocados to getting into avocado oils. And we love value addition on the continent. It reduces the commodity exposure. Avocado oil is at the same price point as like olive oil, so it's a very high margin product, a lot safer bet than, say, for us, particularly with a debt mechanism. What we all forgot to ask is, when you put in the avocado oil, what do you do with the waste? In the first year, they realized as they went to scale, none of us had budgeted wastewater treatment. So they ended up having to hire trucks to haul it off. It was expensive. They had to work with the city to get infrastructure in. And I can see many of the investors around here nodding their heads like, been there, done that. Yeah, and they literally had to raise additional capital. What we do in those circumstances is, when we know it's the business itself isn't flawed, but they're not going to be able to repay our loan as scheduled, we'll move it to interest only for 12 months, and we'll try and get the same return in the long run. And we've done that 4 or 5 times now, and that was a lesson learned. We didn't expect to do a lot of that, but we would much rather not exercise our security, and we have some form of security on everything we do, and we've never exercised it yet. So what we try and do is work with them to work through these struggles and problems and get what they need. And now they started repaying our loan again. 2 months ago, 3 months ago. So they're back on track, and they're going to have a very good year. And now they're about 80% avocado oil and about 20% avocados. And it's a much, much more stable, better business.
Right.
So we love where that one's headed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did they do with the waste?
Well, there's a sewage system, and they were close enough that they worked with the city, and they got an installation. So it was all a bit of a miracle to get that done in a timely way. So they no longer have to ship it off in trucks. So it was more a matter of solving that infrastructure issue than anything.
Well, and they were selling so there's water waste and there's hard waste, and the hard waste they were selling through to
the hard waste, that's right.
What were they, fertilizer producers,
Yeah.
I think?
The water gets like all kinds of residual oils in it, so it goes into the wastewater treatment area. But yeah, the hard waste they turned into a profit center. They actually sell that to animal feed, and other folks grind it up.
Right.
And, so Cynthia, let's go over to you. Now we're shifting over to getting deals done, to portfolio monitoring. What can you tell us when you first came in, compared to where we are now. And Andy is a big part of this. Harry was on the front end of this learning curve before we hired Andy. So what have we learned about portfolio monitoring?
Yeah, I wasn't there pre Andy, so I can only imagine how hectic it was.
Well,
But it was just Harry doing
Harry
everything.
had a lot of hair before this.
Yeah, it all fell off. Yeah, no. So Andy is like really leading us to get to being a world-class fund, and a big part of that is portfolio monitoring. So he's had 2 local ladies who are amazing, and what that's done for us is we've been more intentional about following on with the portfolio companies. Quarterly financial statements, there's covenants that they signed up for, which we had sort of been a bit softer on, but now with the team, just very deliberately following on that, it's been really good. So it's helped us spot trouble before it actually happens, because you can analyze the statements and see this is how your growth is growing. Okay, there's something here happening with the cash flows, or there's something here happening with your EBITDA or your revenues. What's going on? Just explain it to us. And then we help them also realize, oh wait, there's something wrong here, let's work on this together. Or maybe we need some capital for this, and so on and so forth. Or just tighter operations and stuff. So that's coming all with the portfolio monitoring. It's also helping us with the term sheets, because part of the monitoring is looking at the covenants. What did you sign up for? What did you promise to be doing and sharing with us? So that's helping us craft term sheets for new portfolio companies and say, okay, this was good, so let's put this in this term sheet, and so on. It's been good, and looking forward to more of that portfolio.
Yeah, I would add to that, having a local Kenyan team with portfolio monitoring has been absolutely invaluable. Prior to that, we had everyone who led a deal tended to take that relationship through. So we had everybody kind of doing portfolio monitoring, and it didn't work great.
It worked when we started life. We had 2 investments.
Yeah.
You talked to Ben, I talked to Priska.
Yeah,
we were good.
Yeah.
15 companies in, and we're going, who am I talking to? It becomes much more complicated.
Yeah, now it's all organized, and and you're going to see much, I think, better and more interesting portfolio summary reports as a result. So I hope you enjoy that. I'm going to share a couple of fundraising. David, feel free to speak up if. So we spent early on. We said, hey, there's these faith-driven RIAs. There's a bunch of them in the room here. This whole. Eventide, biblically responsible. Hey, we fit right into that somewhere, and it's billions of dollars. Surely they're going to love our fund. We had like 10 million of AUM or something. Yeah. First-time fund managers in Africa, and so we literally hired a consultant who really knew this industry. I can take responsibility for this, and we went out and we started talking about mid-sized companies in Africa, unusual fee structure. A lot of things that were like. Speaking Greek to folks that spoke English. And this was 3-4 years ago. What's exciting about the lesson learned is we learned a lot of things. The second fund was really set up learning those lessons. We love the first fund. We like the structure of it, by the way. That wasn't a problem. It just didn't fit the RIA community. Right. And the new fund actually does fit very well with private alternative investments. And there's a bunch of folks here, and I'm so glad you're here. That's a great sign. That we've evolved to where we can be seamless. We're now approved by Fidelity and Schwab and their custodial platforms, Blue Trust, One Ascent, Vidant. These are all multi-billion-dollar RIA firms. 3-4 years ago, when we were trying to do that, we should have waited because that was a waste of time. Totally. Yeah. The other thing I'll share this with, we have a lot of folks that came out of the fundraising world and the opportunity international orbit. And David, I remember early on, you're like, fourth quarter is going to be our big month, in November, December, we're going to work 60 hours a week. And you were shocked that we had, the first 3 or 4 years, our biggest month was April, May. Remember that? And it's because a lot of folks that are looking at a different type of wallet. They're saying, how did my business do? And they're getting the returns in, and by April they're doing their tax returns. And in April, May, there's folks that are willing to make a bunch of investment decisions. We still have an important fourth quarter, by the way, but we also learned that some years and many years, our best months for fundraising were actually not tied to a normal nonprofit cycle. Yeah. They're tied to more of an investor cycle, which was really good lesson learned. So another quote, I'm going to pepper a quote in here. Henry Ford, by the way. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. So I want to recognize our IC and board. They've been critical elders in helping us navigate this whole journey. I'd like to pivot to spiritual integration. We'll finish on that. Cynthia, I think I'll go over to you. Talk about what happened at Exotic, and then you were involved in the launch of C12. We all have been, and I want to share more about that, but you go ahead and share some lessons learned.
Yeah, so Exotic is the macadamia nut processing business that I told you about that almost drove us nuts. No pun intended.
I like that.
Yeah, so when we met Jane with John, he was in Kenya at the time. So she told us her story, how much trouble the business had been through from COVID, post-COVID, and I think that was late 2024. Yeah. So the trouble had just been year after year after year. And she'd been fighting the good fight with, the government, trying to push for policy and so on. And she was really carrying a lot. And as many women do, you're sort of just soldiering on every day. So at the end of the meeting, we were in the boardroom, and she had told us a story, and we could sense the heaviness in her heart, and yet she was still clinging on to hope. And she told us she was a believer. So John, I think you felt called to pray for her, just because of what she was going through. So we prayed, and she didn't expect it. She didn't. This had never happened to her with any other investor or any other fund that had visited her. And by the end of that prayer, she was like in tears and just crying and entirely moved by that prayer. And even when we eventually said no to the transaction, she was still very grateful to us. She said, "You guys are an amazing fund. I hope that we can still get to work together later." And we taught them so much, both on the spiritual front, but also on the financials as well. So that was like a really
I love that story. And one of the lessons learned is that, there was a time, we work with Ardent Mentoring. Some of you have heard of them. I would call it a world class. They train mentors, of high caliber folks like all of you, and how to be a great mentor, and then they line them up with entrepreneurs that are high impact places like in Africa. And we work with them, and we're deeply involved in launching C12 right now, which is in Kenya. And I think about 5 or 6 of the first cohort are coming out of our portfolio. So we introduced those companies, and we're working closely with them. But early on, we thought, hey, we can outsource some of the spiritual integration. And what we learned is that it's really on us to be in the moment. We have the relationship. We're the ones that they open up to. We're the ones that have life-on-life, 5-year, long-term relationship. We need to be spiritually prepared. Andy shared a powerful devotion at one of our strategy offsites once from 1 Peter 3:15. Always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that's in you, but do it winsomely. And that's kind of the culture of our team, is that you always need to be ready. These businesses always have ups and downs, and those downs are where it's us, not outsourcing to Ardent Mentoring or C12. Need to be there in that moment. And when we prayed with her, we hear regularly, there's no other fund that prays with us. I can't believe that you're an investment fund. Need you do that? And that's a wonderful feedback when we hear that. So. Yeah, so Harry, do you want to briefly share on what you learned about the Kenyan perspective on corporate chaplains?
Yeah. So going back to your outsourcing conversation, we learned actually talking to Henry Kaesner, one of the things they do is they try and put corporate chaplains in each of the businesses. We thought that was a tremendous idea. Yeah. And so I went kind of boldly into a conversation with a guy named Dennis Tongoi, who was at one point the head of Church Missionary Society. He's a business leader, he's a Christian leader, super respected guy.
He's a navigator.
Oh, he's a navigator?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
There you go. Anyway, and I sat down with him and said, this is what we're trying to do, so, and I went in with this, obviously that's fine. Could you put us in touch with maybe some networks who we could connect with to do that? And he said, what? You're putting a corporate chaplain into a business? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I don't think that's going to work. I said, what do you mean you don't think that's going to work? He goes, well, you should understand that you're coming at this from a perspective of a Westerner where 80% of your workforce are not believers and don't have any kind of chaplaincy relationship or spiritual relationship. And so a corporate chaplaincy, that's a great idea. That is not the case in the companies that you'll go and work in. You'll find it's probably the other way around. It's probably 80% of them already attend a church, already have a great spiritual oversight and people they can talk to, and actually it might actually create a problem between that situation. I was just sitting there going, can that be right? And I think it was a huge learning for us there that some of the what we might perceive to be straightforward and obvious things that we, from a Western perspective, believe are obvious, not necessarily true. It might be true, but not necessarily true, and we really needed to listen to the wisdom and insight of other people. It was one person's opinion, but it was almost a shocking opinion that gave us sort of pause for thought. But that combined with this idea that we ourselves needed to be more involved in that sort of relational approach meant we haven't gone forward trying to put corporate chaplains in all of the businesses in.
Yeah, culturally it just wasn't a fit, even though it's growing popular here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really.
And it may be in the future a fit. Who knows? It's these things are never static, but certainly wasn't a fit then.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're at time. I'm gonna just conclude with a few thoughts. C.S. Lewis said, "Failures are finger posts on the road to achievement." And we've had our share. There's many more we could share. I think anybody in our team is probably sitting in their chair going, "How come you didn't share that one? How come you didn't share that one?" Iris looks like she wants to jump up and say, "Hey, I got one." But so we hope that we found this panel encouraging. It's looking back at putting this together. We had to choose between 20 or 30. These are the ones we chose. And I think we've become stronger, smarter, a little wiser. Certainly, it's been humbling, and more poised for growth than I think we ever were 5 years ago. If we would have grown too fast, too soon, we would have made these mistakes 10x. And now, I thank God that we sometimes grew as slow as we did, because I think these lessons are going to make us better. I'll say this, and I'll finish. I love quotes, by the way, so I'll finish with this Amy Carmichael. Do you know Amy Carmichael, a missionary, India, went through a lot of suffering? She said, "Can he have followed far who has no wound or scar?" Yeah, and we have our scars, battle scars. We were just up at Copper Mountain for a strategy retreat, and I told Harry and maybe a few others on my team, I feel like we're war buddies. Like, you get together and you're kind of like, okay, yeah, we have some scars. Yeah. Cynthia, you're starting to become a war buddy through your, aren't you glad we hired you? Yeah, so thanks again for this. This is the first time. We probably won't do it every year. Until we have a barrel full of failures again, we'll do it again. Yeah. All right.